All right, testing. Good morning, everyone. So please feel free to grab a seat. And we are good to kickstart this committee session. Thank you, everyone, for making the time, for assisting, for participating in the Far Field Committee. We have an objective plan for this session, which is for this group to have shared understanding of the project scope, deliverables, and timeline. All right? Before we get into the agenda, so we have planned an agenda for you, for this group. We will begin with some general information to get you started. Then we will pass to introductions. We will discuss roles and responsibilities. All right? Then we will present the project deliverables, timeline, and an overview. And in item number 6, we will have a space for all of you to bring any questions you might have. So what I will ask you is, if you have any question once we are going through the content, please take notes of those questions, as we will be able to open up the floor in item number 6. All right? There are some other rules that we are going to explain briefly, but that is said, before getting started, I would like to give opportunity for an opening statement.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Peter Zanoni, the city manager for the city of Corpus Christi. And I just got back from Washington, where we were there lobbying, essentially, for federal funding for desal projects, either if the council pursues to move forward with the Inner Harbor and also the Harbor Island. Because we know, and I know, having been here for 7 years as the city manager, that our sources of water, of additional water supplies, are limited at this point to groundwater and desalination. That's it. And we know today we are in a drought of record with some bad statistics on our side, which is that 9 months before we potentially could go into curtailment with only 2 rain events of significance based on 30-year averaging or modeling. And so the springtime rains in April, May, and then hurricane season are our last 2 chances to replenish our western reservoirs to stave off curtailment. So this city has got to, develop a water portfolio that is sustainable, reliable, and one that we can turn on a water source one day or one period and turn it off the next. And we don't have that in our system today. The city for too long has relied on surface water, both from the west, our 2 reservoirs in the west, and then east water sources, including Lake Texana and the lower Colorado. All are surface water, and all are extremely prone to drought in an area that is already known to be drought prone. So it's a horrible setup that we've allowed ourselves to be comfortable with. And so the notion of doing a desalination facility in the Inner Harbor or in Harbor Island or both is something that we want to seriously consider. One step in moving our project forward, which is the Inner Harbor, is confidence in the community that there won't be a negative impact to the bay, either of the systems that exist there. So the ship channel, the Nueces Bay, and the Corpus Christi Bay. I'm not a scientist, but I listen to scientists and listen to a lot of people, and based on what I've seen from the scientific community, from consultants that have worked in this project for over a decade, there will not be a negative impact to the bay system. But I'm just Peter, the city manager, so what we want to do in this committee is give an opportunity to share more information with you, so you feel more comfortable about what might happen in the bay with a desalination facility. And so that's the goal of the committee or task force. We know there's a lot of interest. Carrie Meyer is one of my appointees. We've heard her many times. The Heart Research Institute is another one. There's many in here. I've appointed 9 individuals to represent different professional groups and stakeholder groups like the NAACP or Hillcrest. And then the City Council appointed 9 individuals as well. So it's a big committee or task force, but I think we can manage through it. And again, the goal is to share information, get a lot of information from you, and move forward with a better understanding of what what happens if we were to do a desal facility in the Inner Harbor. So with that, I do, before I conclude, want to thank you for taking time. This will take time. We could be meeting twice a month, but at least once a month, maybe 3 times a month, depending on what's happening. Between now and hopefully April is the goal. And so thank you for taking time. We know this will take time away from you, not just in these meetings, but there may be additional work that we ask you to do or you may choose to do on your own. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the facilitators.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, we will start with general information with Brett, so I will pass it to you.
Thank you, Jose. So thank you, Peter. Like Peter said, we do appreciate you guys participating in this, volunteering. We know you guys have busy lives, both professionally and personally, so we appreciate you coming out and taking the time. Just some general housekeeping things that we just wanted to point out before we really kick this off. So for those of you who don't know, across the hallway, we do have our restrooms. We also have a water fountain if you need to use it. If for any reason you need to leave, we do have, as you probably already know, we have the elevators out the door to the right as well as a stairwell. So if there is an emergency, the stairwell is out and to the right. We also have another stairwell out and to the left, so we do have 2 paths. If you haven't already gotten food, we encourage you to get food. We will continue to provide food at all future meetings for this group. And it looks like most people have food. If you do have dietary restrictions, you could also let us know, and we'll try to accommodate you at these future meetings. We also have down in our basement, so if you go to the elevators and go down the basement, we do have a shop that has additional drinks, snacks, foods. It also has an ice machine. So if there's something that you don't like here, there are other options down in the basement, so you can feel free to leave and go and get whatever you need. In front of you, the black boxes, these are the microphones. So I just wanted to generally give you the feel on how they work so that we can stay productive. In front of all of the mics, you have a button that shows a person verbally speaking. So we ask that if you are going to ask questions or comment, please hit that button. Make sure that your mic is green. And then when you're done speaking, please turn it off. Because we are live streaming this, it's important that we're able to get your voices heard for everybody online. If it's not turned on, we may be able to hear you in here, but they will not be able to hear you online. So we want to make sure that all the conversation is heard. Lastly, we know that you guys are busy. If you need to take phone calls, text messages, maybe answer an email, we just ask that you step out of the room, take care of that business, come back in so we can continue to be productive. This will be the meeting location for all future meetings unless otherwise notified. So it'll be 6th floor conference room, and this will be the configuration. So that's all the general items. If you have other items of concern or questions, as Jose mentioned, if you just hold those until we get to the kind of question and general discussion section, we can discuss those at that time. So
Brett, can I just add it?
Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
If there's too many of the black microphones on, there's negative feedback. So after you're done speaking, just turn it back off. And then just to repeat, because it's important for me, but this is broadcast live on YouTube. And so to access it, it's what, you go to the city's YouTube. Right. What would you type in? I'm usually at the meeting, so I don't access it. But do you type, yeah?
I'll find that out, Peter, and we'll be able to share that with the team. And after this meeting, we're also going to post the link to watch the video on the city's website.
Okay, so it'll be recorded and somebody can watch it later?
That's right.
We're also going to be using a service. We have to set up a contract with them though first, but we're going to, this meeting is recorded through the city's site. And we're going to be having the entire meeting transcribed with the service. We just give them the recording and then they transcribe it. So that'll allow us to have minutes of the meeting. So there'll be detailed minutes of the meeting. So if anybody wants to go back and review it, or if they hadn't seen the meeting, if they want to look at the minutes, we'll be doing that as well.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to the next item of the agenda, trying to keep up with the time. Let's make a round of introductions. Let's try to make this quick and effective. Let's begin with the core team from the committee, and if we can begin from left to right there with Karen.
Try this.
Oh, that's better. Thank you. Hi, I'm Ricky Anderson. I am with Plummer Associates. We are an engineering firm that specializes in water, water, wastewater, stormwater. We're engineers, designers, and planners that tackle water problems in general. My role within Plummer is the South Texas and Central Texas team leader for conveyance, which is pipelines and treatment. So that would be water and wastewater treatment. Plummer's role on this project is to act as a technical advisor. So we are helping the city put together minimum qualifications with which to evaluate the far-field modeler. We're not actually doing the modeling. We're just serving as a technical advisor. We will also help draft the scope of work for the actual modeling by giving our technical input on that. And then we will review the tech memo that comes out of the model. So my role as part of this project is as a project manager for Plummer's scope of work. So I graduated from Texas Tech University with a civil engineering degree. I have 23 years of experience. And although I am a professional engineer, I am not a subject matter expert in modeling, but we do have people with Plummer who are. So as things get more technical or there are questions that I can't answer, I will pull them in for their input. So, thank you.
Nick Winkleman, I'm the Interim Chief Operating Officer of Corpus Christi Water.
I'm Peter Zanoni, the city manager for the city of Corpus Christi.
I'm Brett Van Hazel. I'm the Director of Water Supply Management for Corpus Christi Water, and right now I'll be taking the lead for this committee. We are going to transition to Karen Costanzo at the end of the table. She's actually going to start in the future meeting. She'll be the lead for this committee. I'm going to step back and be a technical advisor and assist through the process. So as we transition out of this meeting, you will start to see some more information coming in from Karen. I'm still involved, but I just want you guys to be aware of that transition. Thank you.
Jose Rodriguez, I'm here with SWCA. We're going to be providing the facilitation for this series of committees. We have one goal here, which is making good, productive use of your time, complying and addressing the goals of the agenda. So if there is any specific interest in raising an opinion, please let me know after the committee. So. Yeah, let's try this one.
I'm Christine Westerman with SWCA Environmental Consultants, and I'm a project manager out of our San Antonio office, and my main focus is regulatory compliance for transportation and utility projects, and I have specifically some experience with regional water planning.
Hey, good morning. Jeff Pollack. I'm the Chief Strategy and Sustainability Officer at the Port of Corpus Christi Authority. And now that I have this microphone, I'm going to use it.
I'm Mike Wetz. I'm the chair for Coastal Water Health at the Hart Research Institute. have co-founded the Bringing Baffin Back initiative along with our partners at Bays and Estuaries program that aims to address water quality issues in Baffin Bay. And I'm also the managing partner on the General Land Office's Clean Coast Texas initiative, which aims to bring resources to communities to address water quality issues. And I will be the future HRI delegate.
I'm Greg Stuns. I'm the Senior Executive Director at the Heart Research Institute. You all asked the Institute to serve on this committee, is why I asked Mike to be here today to see which of us best serves the needs once we get a better idea of the roles and responsibilities. Mike is an expert in far-field modeling and that kind of thing as well. So once we see where it best fits, one of us will represent us on that committee.
Jesse Gilbert, President and CEO, Texas State Aquarium.
Hi, I'm Stacy Hester. I'm the Safety, Security, Health, and Environmental Manager at Gulf Coast Growth Ventures.
Hi, everyone. Kirsten Stanzel. I'm the Executive Director for the Coastal Bend Bays and Estuaries Program.
Hey everyone, I'm Jason Hale. I live here in Corpus, and I am a member of the Coastal Bend Sierra Club Group.
Yes, my name is Deanna King. I'm the president of the local NAACP, and also I was raised in the Hillcrest area. So thank y'all for letting me be a part of this advisory committee.
Hello, Jessica Politza. I am a project coordinator at the TAM-UCC Center for Water Supply Studies, but I am here as a member of the public. I'm getting my master's in environmental science.
Good morning, Ron Guzman, I'm Managing Principal for Friese Nichols Consulting Engineering Corpus Christi office.
Carl Kroll, currently owner of Kroll Engineering. In my past life, I worked for the city for 20 years. I was Assistant City Manager for Public Works and Public Utilities. Worked for HDR Engineering as Vice President for 17 years, retired. And then they told me I couldn't retire. I'm also on the Del Mar Board of Regents.
With
Good afternoon, I'm Brad Bartleson. I've been leading a local citizens water group called Water for Life, studying this for about 9 months as I got concerned about it. And I also spent 12 years in supercomputing doing computational modeling, so I'm happy to assist where I can here.
Javi Motagi, I'm a local business owner.
David Loeb, I own Landlord Resources, which is a local property management and redevelopment company. Former council member, former chair of the city's Brownfields Committee, and I'm currently serving as a Del Mar Regent.
Hello, I'm Sharon Hertzka, Director of the Marine Science Institute, the University of Texas at Austin in Port Aransas. I'm an estuarine ecologist and open ocean ecologist with a lot of experience in working with physical oceanographers and modeling.
Carrie Meyer. I'm with North Beach Community Association. I'm also a North Beach business owner. I own a kayak company, so I'm physically in the water that will be affected.
Okay.
Can I just add, because you may see him at future meetings, but not present, but on the task force includes former Councilman Greg Smith, and then Lamont Taylor, a Hillcrest community representative. I think everybody else but those two individuals are here. Does that seem right, you guys? Yeah. Okay, I just want to point it out because you may see him at the next meeting, just so. And then for the Heart Research Institute, Dr. Stuntz, it'll be you or Mike, right? But it won't. and you'll consistently go, one of you two will consistently be on the task force from that point forward, right? It's not two for, yeah, just because I don't want the committee members to think there's some unfairness.
Not two votes, just to be clear.
Yeah, right, okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for the round of introductions. Let's keep on with the agenda. Next topic is rules and responsibilities, and we have a set of ground rules for everyone to follow. This is nothing different that you might have already seen in other groups, just to keep a good, respectful environment, productive environment, and that we are effective. So the first rule is shared understanding. Chances are we might get into some technical concepts, and here we need everyone to have good understanding of what's happening. So there are two sub-responsibilities here. To the person that might be speaking technical concepts, you need to make an extra effort to make sure that everyone is following. And to the person that is listening, if you are not understanding or following the technical conversation, you might immediately raise your hand and just pointing out that you are not following and need an extra clarification. And you can do this at any time, just so that we don't have an accumulation of questions at the end. Next rule is to stay focused on topic. This is in order to keep a respectful use of your time. We have planned an agenda with topics, and we know that you have separated these 2 hours of your life, work, and personal time. So let's try to keep up with how we have planned the agenda, and if there are any remaining items you would like to raise, we can take notes after the committee session. Next, rule number 3 is respect all perspectives. So we have a very diverse group, and that's excellent. That's what we are looking for. Ideally, my objective as facilitator is that all of your perspectives and insights are shared and listened and documented, right? So let's keep a respectful environment for that. Next point is one conversation at a time. We know that if we have some noise in the background, some people might not have complete attention to the person that is speaking. So let's, again, keep this environment respectful and listen to the person that is speaking. There will be prepared times for everyone to raise your hand and raise any questions or comments. And the fifth one is to engage constructively. So all of your thoughts, insights, please don't hold to them. Share them in the appropriate time, and we will take good documentation of them. So now, having said that, I would just like to have a group agreement that we are following this, just some noddings or thumbs up, and we can move forward with the next item. Okay. So now we have some responsibilities for each of the group participants. Here are some to the advisory committee. Then we will move on to the city staff and the facilitation team. So for the advisory committee, for instance, we want all of you to review and provide feedback on the scope of the study that Ricky has mentioned, and on the evaluation criteria that is going to be used to select the modeler, all right? We want you to provide input on the selection of the qualified hydrodynamic modeler, and considering that we have a very diverse group, we want to hear from you, your perspective as subject matter experts and also as community representatives. Last but not least, the advisory committee has the responsibility to support clear communication between the city staff to the public. There are some additional expectations, and I'm going to be quick with this one. And for instance, we are expecting for this advisory committee members to attend 12 meetings. Ideally, we understand that there might be some exceptions, rules of force that might need you to put your time into other emergencies, but as possible, we are counting on your personal attendance. We will be sharing materials, so we expect all of you to review them, to review the materials between meetings so that we can use good, effective use of your time in these 2 hours. It's going to be a challenge, but I'm sure that we are going to be able to do so. Provide thoughtful, constructive input, and communicate accurately with your represented communities. There are some responsibility as well with the city staff to present an overview of the Farfield project and provide updates to the City Council at key milestones of the process, to synthesize advisory committee input and integrating into the project process, to prepare and deliver formal recommendations to City Council, and to present the final recommended modular to City Council prior to contract execution. Is this good, Brett?
Yeah, so just to kind of summarize this, the city staff will be doing updates to council along the way. And at the end of the entire process, the plan is for the staff to put together a presentation that reflects the entire committee's findings throughout the process, but also after we have a report and everybody's reviewed it and commented, that we collectively, regardless of the results, whether we like them or not, we can say that the process was objective, it was fair, all voices were heard, and we're going to go to City Council and present this. And it'll be important for us, the staff, to make sure that we're capturing the voice of this committee. So we're going to collaborate with you as much as possible to make sure that whatever message we're giving at council is consistent with this committee's opinion on how things are going. So just like everything else, we plan on collaborating with you to make sure that the message is consistent and that we're not misrepresenting what's actually going on here. So we're going to do our best to make everything about this process objective, which is why we're bringing you in right now to make you a part of the entire thing. Scope development, modeler acquisition, defining what we're actually trying to get out of the model, and then as we review the comments, review the technical output from the modeler's model, we're going to keep you guys involved the entire way. Again, at the end of this, regardless of the results, we want everyone to feel like this was an objective process and it was successful. So that's city staff's goal, and if at any point you feel like we're deviating, we want you to tell us. Okay? Thank you. Thanks, Jose.
And as for the facilitator responsibilities, we also have a share. We want to support, this is goal-focused, so that's why we have a clear agenda, clear objective, so that we can make this productive. If you ask me how success looks like for the facilitation aspect of this series of committee meetings, is to have balanced participation. Everyone participates, provide insights, comments, and all of that gets documented. All right? And we will also report back to the City Council on how this stakeholder input was documented and the process we are following as of now. If we might move to the next item of the agenda, I will pass it over to Brett to provide a project overview, and then we will move on with Ricky.
So I just want to do a quick recap to just kind of say why we're here right now. So most of you know about the Inner Harbor desalination project that was awarded in December of 2024 to Kiewit. And we worked through the design efforts, the pre-design and design efforts with Kiewit up into September of last year, at which time we terminated the contract with Kiewit. After a couple months, the City Council came back and we kind of reopened the door on the Inner Harbor project, and we approved a memorandum of understanding with the Corpus Christi desal partners. They were the #2 ranked firm that was part of the original design build solicitation. So and just so you know, Corpus Christi desal partners is a joint venture between Acciona and Mastech being the contractor, Acciona being the designer. So in December, we executed the memorandum of understanding, and the intent of that memorandum was for the CCDP, the Corpus Christi desal partners, to develop a cost-certain option or options for council consideration for the project. And right now, the current target deliverables for that effort, the first being in February, where the CCDP will provide a cost-certain option presentation at City Council for consideration. That will basically be a proposed plan to build the plant at a certain capacity for a certain price. All that is still being worked on. And if council, after that presentation, says that we would like to move forward with executing a contract with CCDP, we would then go back in April. That's the projected date. It's subject to change, but that's the current projected date. We would go back in April to have the city council approve a contract with CCDP for design and construction of the Inner Harbor plant. So the reason for this effort is there were members of council as well as community that felt like we needed to do an additional far-field model of the entire bay system. So it would be the Inner Harbor Ship Channel, it would be Nueces Bay, and Corpus Christi Bay. So they expressed the need to have that information provided to them ahead of the April decision date. So the goal right now is for this committee, as well as Plummer's efforts, to all be completed in advance of us going to City Council to ask for them to approve a contract with CCDP. Now, we're still working through the timeline. I presented a timeline last week on how everything's going to play out, and we'll talk about that briefly later in this presentation. So the goal right now is for us to continue through this in concert with the CCDP's efforts, so that we can get in front of council and they have all the information they need in order to make an educated decision. So just want to point out, I've shown this photo a lot in my presentations over the past year, but I just wanted to show it again for those of you who are unaware. The area highlighted in green, which is on Flint Hill property in the Hillcrest neighborhood area, is it's on the limit. If you look on the left, Nueces Bay Boulevard is we'll just call it the eastern or western extent, and then the Broadway is the northern extent. So that's where the actual plant would sit. And then if you go out towards the ship channel, you see two areas. The area in green is the intake. That would be where the water is coming from the Inner Harbor Ship Channel and going to the plant for treatment. And then the area you see in kind of a salmon, and it's a half circle, that would be the discharge area where the water, the brine, would be leaving the plant going back into the ship channel. And this is why we're doing the far-field study, is because the plant is going to be discharging a brine back into the water, and we want to understand what impact that brine is going to have on the overall system. So that's just a brief narrative of why we're here today, and then we're going to turn it over to Ricky, and she's going to just talk a little bit more on what far-field modeling is, and then we'll turn it back over to Jose. So, Ricky?
Just have a quick question for you. I'm not understanding. So the contract with the desal partners for April, how does the actual report from the far-field modeling, or when that, how do those two timelines mesh up? Or what are you expecting for when this modeling would be completed?
So right now the target is to have the model done, the report completed from the modeling effort in April, in advance of the council date. That's right. Now, we're still working through the procurement discussions on how we actually fairly reach out to the different modeling companies to gather their qualifications, and then coming up with a timeline that is going to provide us the highest level of success, because we don't want to ask for feedback in too short of time where they actually say, nah, we're good, we're not going to do it. There's not enough time to go through that, and we also don't want to give them too much time because we collectively on a shorter timeline. So the city team with Plummer are still working through the logistics of that. But right now, our target is April in advance of the council date, which I believe is April 24th or April 28th. My days get mixed, but that's the plan.
So, let me get this.
Lamont, can we get Lamont a mic?
Microphone. There it is.
Yeah, can you turn that on for him? Oh, that one's not on.
So let me get this correct. So the purpose is to have in place a contract for a far-field model. Then you have in place the contract for the design build project
So-
without any study being in between.
No, that's not the case. So the plan, and we may want to just push it because I do have a timeline outlined in some of the later slides that we'll talk through that, Lamont, but we'll make sure that we get that question answered. I apologize if this is confusing, but we do have a timeline a little bit later in the presentation that will hopefully answer those questions. Deanna, did you have a quick?
Yes, I have a quick question. If the far-field model is not complete by the April date, will it be pushed off?
The council
For the
decision?
decision.
I think that will be up to the city manager and the city council to make that determination. We're going to push our schedule. And Peter, I don't know if you caught the full question, but it's really is, if we don't have the modeling report available for this committee to have reviewed and finalized in advance of the taking the CCDP contract to council for consideration, will that council date be moved to a later date to allow for the report to be completed?
I think the answer is a little bit of yes, with the addition that there may be enough material for this task force or committee to render some initial opinion. So it could be a several-step process where in April, if there's a consideration of a contract, it could be based on feedback from the task force that's available at the time. But we can certainly look at moving that date back into May or whatever it takes. But I think this is January, so we're going to have several months of work: January, February, March, April. There'll be a lot of material, a lot of opinion development between now and April. So there may be enough, even though the work may not be concluded, to at least render some initial thought. That may be enough for council to at least have a presentation briefing. Maybe they don't take a vote in April. But we're open to making sure we have a good process that has a meaningful output. And so we'll be open to that, open to pushing the April date if we need to.
We do have some slides after the project deliverables to talk a little bit more about the timeline. And just after the timeline, we will have an open round of conversation. Okay, a follow-up question.
Yes, so Mike Watts, Heart Research Institute. I just want to introduce a little bit of realism into this process, in the sense that most likely to be able to do accurate far-field modeling, you're almost certainly going to have to collect additional data over the course of seasons. And that's been one of the concerns that we've seen from the external review that was done on the permitting modeling, which was that there was just discrete, very limited data that fed into that model. So you're probably looking at a much longer time frame of data collection in order to actually develop an accurate model.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mike. So we are going to dive into that maybe a little bit later in this discussion, because one of the goals that I think we're going to have and we can talk a little bit today, but one of the goals I think for the next meeting is really diving into the details on what this committee actually wants to see, because I think collectively you're going to have a pretty broad range of the amount of information that people want out of this report. So I think that's good, because we agreed you can go extremely detailed or you can go very narrow, and so I think that's good discussion that we can have. I think at the end of this, at the adjournment, or not the adjournment, but the additional discussion, I do want to talk about that, because I want people to start thinking about what they want out of this report. Do you just care about salinity? Do you just care about the oxygen levels? Do you just care about X, Y, Z? So you guys need to start thinking about what you want to get out of the report, and then we as a group need to figure out what that is, so that Plummer can develop the scoping document appropriately. So, Jose, if we want to, or sorry, Ricky, if we want to keep going.
Sure. So a quick overview. I know that all of this is probably pretty familiar to a lot of you, but maybe some of you not so much. So what is desalination water treatment plants? Desalination treatment is when seawater is brought in, the salt and the minerals are removed, and then fresh water for drinking is produced, and then the saltier water, the discharge or the brine,
needs to be pushed out and discharged. So the reason that we're here is because that brine may have water quality implications. And what are those implications? So salinity, aquatic species are adapted to existing salinity conditions, and increases in that salinity may cause stress, reduce growth, or affect survival for aquatic life. Shallower areas in nearshore habitats may experience higher salinity for longer periods due to meteorological and tidal mechanisms. So really the understanding of where, how much, and for how long salinity changes occur is essential to protecting water quality. What is a far-field water quality model? A far-field model is a computer simulation that predicts how water mixes after the discharge water, or the brine, the salty water, has spread into the wider bay. So it focuses on bay-wide conditions, not just the mixing near the outfall where it's discharged. It's looking at it a little further out. That's why it's called far-field. The model evaluates how salinity spreads and dilutes over time, how tides, currents, and the bay geometry affect mixing, and the quantification of salinity levels compared to the natural background or ambient conditions. So it answers where does the salinity go once it becomes part of the bay? So what does the far-field model achieve? Why do you want to model? Because it's a way to predict water quality impacts before you start discharging. It identifies potential issues early on, and it provides data-driven and defensible results. It also supplements monitoring data to observe water quality changes, so you can monitor throughout. Model roles. So the near-field model was already completed, and it was used to help design the pipe diffuser for optimal mixing, and it ensured a discharge permit and mixing zone compliance. The far-field model, which is what we're here to talk about today and has not been completed, estimates salinity increases above ambient levels. It evaluates spatial and temporal extent, and it assesses whether impacts remain localized or if they're spread bay-wide. And here are a few model specifics. There are high-level inputs, and those include things like bay shape and depth, tides and currents, existing salinity conditions, discharge rate and salinity. So those are some of the high-level inputs, and we'll talk a little more about some of the details that will drive the extent of the model and the accuracy of the model. Model caveats. Model runtimes are heavily dependent on the model type, dimensionality, and granularity. And that's one of the reasons why Brett mentioned towards the end of this, he would like for everyone to really start thinking about what you want the model to achieve, because the amount of granularity and detail is going to make a big difference in how quickly this model can be completed and how accurate it is. For instance, one scenario can take anywhere from seconds to days to run. So there is a lot to consider. So quickly, I'll go through project deliverables. So as far as Plumber, my organization, as far as our role, we are developing a list of potential modelers to give to the city. It's a pretty specialized area of expertise, so we're trying to cast a wide net and identify as many as we can. Then we're also going to put together the required qualifications to select the modeler. So this will be something similar to past experience on similar projects, resumes of the modeler and other key personnel who are going to be working on the project, and their team, what their quality control procedure looks like, how they're going to achieve the schedule, that type of thing. So we're going to help put together some qualifications for that. And then once the modeler is selected, we will assist with putting together some technical requirements that will go into the modeler's scope of work. That will be the actual work that they perform, the actual modeling work. We will also provide comments on the far-field model technical memorandum. So the tech memo that comes out of the modeling effort, we will review those. We will review that as well.
The timeframe for getting together the names of the modelers, and is that something you're going to come to the committee members and ask for our input on if we know of firms or individuals that do that kind of effort? Or is that something you're doing independently?
Yeah, I would say that if this committee already has some potential modelers that they would like considered, we would encourage you to share that information. Ricky and her team are already doing their own research to find local, national, maybe even worldwide modelers that could come and do this work. The goal is to give us a pretty diverse group of modelers for consideration too, and make sure, one, that they're able to do a pretty wide range, because again, you could go very basic. We've done some very basic modeling here locally, and we've also done some pretty detailed modeling. As an example, the stuff we did on the initial efforts with Kiewit with the Mike 3 model, which is extremely comprehensive, that's probably extremely technical in, and then you could go something core mix, which is a lot more basic, or you could even do mass balance, which is even more basic. So we want to get modelers that have that flexibility to have a wide range, but we would encourage you to submit if you have names. And then once we have that name, that list, and we're able to reach out to the different modelers with the request for qualifications, and we get that information back, then we're going to share that with the committee so that everybody's able to review each qualification package. And then we're going to have a system of ranking them. So we'll have defined scoring metrics, and then that way everybody's scoring them the same way. And then once we get all that, we'll compile it, we'll come back to the committee and talk about the results, and then we'll land on a company. So, thank you.
I just want to say, I want to make really sure that we are not involved in a procurement process. We're an advisory group. We are not qualified to do procurement for the city of Corpus Christi.
We're not going through a formal process, but we are modeling some of what we would normally do so that we can get the best information from the modelers, as opposed to us going out and collecting as little as is available. We want to try to get good information from the different modeling companies so that we can give you the most information available so that you guys can make the best decision on whether that modeler is qualified.
I don't think that we are qualified as a group to make decisions for the city of Corpus Christi on who the city of Corpus Christi procures services from. I think there's pretty well-established state law on that. I think we need to stay out of it.
No, that's good, David. No, we're trying to involve the committee on the process to get input.
I understand.
That's the commitment we made to council as well as the residents, so.
So in essence, you are bringing forward.
So the intent was to provide like a package for each modeling company for this committee to review, and then you would actually score them. In essence, you're just ranking them. The scoring model is just so that there's consistency in your own scoring. And then that way, when we rank them, we're all using the same metrics.
Matrix.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm saying I think that's a really bad idea.
Glad y'all agree.
Okay, we get this documented and we will address this. Absolutely. Thank you,
Talk to
David.
Miles about that one.
I notice on this, you're asking for a statement of qualifications versus a request for proposals, and there's kind of a difference there. And I think the difference is in the request, in the statement of qualifications, they're just giving you what their qualifications are, but in a request for, you're also asking for a project approach. And I'm just curious as to why you're not asking for a project approach from the modelers that are potential modelers.
So right now, we just want to know qualifications for the purpose of this committee. Once we land on someone, then we're actually going to go into more detail. We're actually going to be working with them through our normal procurement process on getting them under contract.
To me, one firm may have more expertise in a particular model than another firm may have.
That's right.
And from what you all were saying, the selection of the model may be key to how this all comes out.
You're absolutely right, and we're going to try to gather their expertise in all ranges of the modeling. This is not a traditional process, Carl, so we're trying to adapt it to allow this committee to participate in the review of the qualifications so we can make a selection. At the end of the day, if the modeler that we selected is not in alignment with the level of expertise needed, because this committee says that we need X, Y, and Z, and this company can't do it, we would have to go to the next qualified modeler that's capable of performing that function. We're going to have to work together to make this work because this is untraditional, and again, we're just trying to get input from this committee on the process.
I mean, I would say getting our input on what kind of modeling you should do, getting our input on what the qualifications are, getting names from people on somebody that they may know that's interested in that, great. But I think it's y'all's responsibility to draw up a scope, do the procurement, and then, you know, if you have a recommendation that you're going to give the council, or I don't know whether they've given you authority or what the price range is on whether, you know, this is something Peter can just pull the trigger on or not. If, you know, bring the names back to us and say, this is why we selected these people, this is what the scoring was, this is what we're doing, and we can give input and feedback on that. But I don't think we should be in the business of scoring, because that's a very specific legal process that we're not authorized under the law to undertake, or that the council's even said.
Thanks,
David.
Very
nebulous.
And we've already run this through legal, and we're not asking, the scoring is more of a means of controlling how you, as a person, score each of the modelers. It's not necessarily scoring for the purposes of selection through our normal process, right? Where we normally would have staff doing the scoring and making the selections. This is our, and maybe scoring, we can get away from that term. We're just trying to standardize how you as an individual review each of the modelers and rank them. And then that way, we as a team have a consistent way of reviewing, so that whether Jason reviewed it, or Ron reviewed it, or you reviewed it, we are all using the same, because we're going to put in there exactly what your goal is in this scoring area, how you're going to look at it. So we're just trying to create consistency in how we approach that. So, but David, point taken. We agree this is definitely outside the norm, and we'll definitely make sure we're doing everything legally.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Deanna.
Deanna King, we're just an advisory committee. We can rank and score, but that doesn't mean the city council is going to pick what we choose. You know, they may see a different view of rankings. We're just advising. I don't think it hurts that we do the scoring, because we don't get the ultimate choice or who's going to do the modeling.
That's right. Neither does council. The city staff is going to be the one executing it. And like you mentioned, you're an advisory group helping us make that decision. We will execute the agreement, and we're going to present the results to council at the end of this. That's right. So, Carrie.
Carrie Meyer, backing up to what Ricky was talking about when she went over what does the model achieve? Under the Farfield model, it says it estimates salinity. And also, Brett was saying, do we want to measure salinity? Do we want to measure oxygen? What all do you want to measure in the Farfield modeling? To me, because I'm in the water, like I already check the GLO's Texas Beach Watch every time I go kiteboarding or kayaking or swimming in the bay, just to see if the bacteria levels are high, right? Because that's all they measure, is just bacteria. They don't measure heavy metals or anything like that. So we have no idea what's really in the water currently that's coming out of the Inner Harbor. So I would like to see, because if you think about the Inner Harbor and the location, the biggest criticism of it is that it's surrounded by industry that's using that water, sucking it into their plants and putting it back into the Inner Harbor. And also the fact that the discharge is so close to the intake. It's like a 0.4 miles, I think. I just measured it on Google Maps. So I would like the modeling as that water moves out into the bay, I would like that modeling to be able to also show contaminants from heavy metals or anything that would be chemical or industrial coming out of the port, and that in that dead-end water, channel that we're talking about doing this in. So that would be my comment. That I don't know if it's possible, because salinity is important for the fish, and oxygen, I think, also to prevent hypoxia. But for swimmers and people in the water, the things that you are getting in through your pores, that you're getting in your mouth, those things that can give you cancer, things like that may already be in the water. I don't know, but is this going to increase that as you desalinate it and it's concentrated and then you put it right back into the water again? Thank you.
Yeah, Brad Bartleson. I just wanted to.
Hey, Brad, if you don't mind making sure the mic's on, and if that one's not working,
Yeah.
it doesn't look like it. There you go. There you go, Brad. Use that one.
All right. Yeah, Brad Bartleson here. I wanted to express that as we look at getting a more detailed temporal and spatial model, that just having the contours, just having the end results, we need some people from the biology to say, to answer the 100,000-foot question, are fish going to die? Will they die in a short period of time from an excursion that happens? Are they going to die over a length of time? That's a difficult question to answer. So as we get to a recommendation, what is the process for involving, the biology groups to give us some sense of the harm to the fisheries? And what part do they play in this end result as opposed to just a salinity number that we get out?
Yeah, so we have again a pretty diverse group here. So we have a number of institutional representatives here that will probably contribute greatly throughout this process. In addition, we have plumbers experts on hand. So I think we'll have collectively, both in this committee and then additional folks that may be not present currently, that can help contribute to that conversation. But I know Kirsten's over there like itching.
Well, I was just going to say, there's some of us on the committee that have that background, marine scientists and academics that have studied that and have been involved in the process of the thresholds that have been set for our bays and estuaries regarding inflows and salinity standards. So there's been a lot of work done on this, setting those standards, and so it's all out there, and there's a few of us on the committee that are familiar with that, and then if there is a need, I guess, to bring in someone, if we wanted to involve anybody else, we could find those people for sure. But I think there's a few of us who could lend some expertise to that for sure.
If you all agree, we can turn this back to Ricky, and we can take back on the questions in the following item of the agenda. We will have plenty of time. All of the comments are appreciated, documented. We will address all of them. Good recommendation. And Ricky, I will switch this back to you.
Okay, and we already covered some of this, but just wanted to present that the respondents who are responding to the request for qualifications will submit statements of qualifications from their firm, and like I had mentioned, those may include, and again, we're still working through that, but similar past projects of the modeling firm, the proposed modeling team, resumes of the proposed key personnel, for instance, the project manager, the modeler, and the quality control person at that firm. For the modeler who is selected, their deliverables are planned to be, we're going to come up with some technical requirements on what their scope of work needs to be with y'all's input and with the city's input. But then they will also have to flesh out that scope of work. And that will be reviewed, of course, by the city. So what they'll submit is a scope of work, a fee, and a schedule, and that will be incorporated into their contract. And then they will submit a draft far-field model technical memorandum, or TM, and then that will be reviewed, and then they will take those comments and revise it and submit a final far-field model TM.
Okay.
So just to go through the timeline, this is a very high-level timeline, and I also want to mention that a lot of what we're doing is very fluid as we navigate the acquisition of the modeler, and then depending on what this committee determines is the best path forward, it may change this timeline because we may need more time to actually do the modeling efforts, data collection, et cetera. So what we know today is, as it says for January, this is the first meeting with this committee. Plummer and the city are currently working on the statement of qualifications for the different modelers and scoping documents, stuff like that. I know it says here that we're looking to submit this by the end of the month. It may push into February. We're still working through that, so I'm just going to give you advance warning. In February, we're going to be meeting to talk through the scoping document as well as the modeler options that are being considered. And in particular, at that February meeting, again, I mentioned it earlier, we really need to, as a team, need to start thinking about what we hope to get out of the model. It's not just the expertise of the modeler, but as kind of Carrie was pointing out, there are things that she wants to get out of this. I want you all to think about what you're hoping to get out. And I do want to mention, again, you know, the discharge for this is the brine coming from the seawater plant. I know Carrie had mentioned she has concerns about other constituents that are in the system right now coming from others. I am a little hesitant on that, Carrie. I think we need to talk about that. But I want to make sure that everyone knows that this plant is not producing any additional chemicals, metals, or other items coming from the plant. Now, we are pulling from the ship channel, so whatever's coming in may be going back out, but the plant itself is not making new metals, minerals, and other. There may be some of the treatment chemicals that are used to treat the water and other constituents like that, but I just want to make sure that we're differentiating between what already exists and what is being produced from the plant. So as a team, we need to talk through that to make sure that we're all on the same page. So the plan in February is that by the end of the month, we will have established, we would have gotten the RFQs, hopefully. We're still working through that. This team has said, this is the modeler we'd like to go with. We've talked through the scope, we've identified that, and we're working with getting the modeler on board and under contract. So in March, we would be meeting with the modeler that has been selected, hopefully. They'll come here to the committee meeting. You'll be able to meet them. They'll be able to talk about their qualifications. We'll be talking about their plan of execution. And you'll be able to ask them questions about their approach, what kind of system they're using, who their experts are, et cetera. And then we can start talking about the delivery of the model results and the final report. And then in April, right now the plan is to have that model report completed. Again, this is a very aggressive schedule, and it is subject to change, again, depending on what this committee decides is required for the modeling effort. So that date could be pushed out. And as Peter mentioned earlier, we may be smart enough at that time where we can contribute enough to City Council for them to be able to decide on the contract with CCDP, but that may be moved too. So we're in January. We'll get smarter as time goes, and we'll continue to keep this committee updated on the plan. So again, the plan is to have everything completed in April, and then we would present that at City Council. And then they would use the information garnered from that, plus what they know and what CCDP presents to make a decision on the Inner Harbor project. So that's the current timeline. Go ahead.
Yes.
Just a couple of comments as we think about the scope of the model. Talk a lot about the characteristics of the modeler, but not of the model. And I think that's something we should probably discuss. What is the minimum, or what are the type of model? I mean, there's many models out there that you're looking for.
That's right.
That could work and be applied to this region. What data are going to be used? And you mentioned the previous effort where they use the Mike 3 model, which is quite complex, but they must have compiled data to run that model. And I'm wondering if it's available to kind of help with the timeline, if there's a data set or data sets already that whoever is contracted for this could take that data, that would help.
Absolutely.
Rather than having them try to go back and compile things from different sources. And then also, something that is important is what are we expecting in terms of the validation of the model? Because you can run a model.
That's right.
The thing is it telling you something that is realistic? So that's something that also has to be taken into the selection process, you know. I understand the timeline is very short, but if there's no validation, then we're just basically trusting an output of a model.
Yeah, no, that's all good points. We completely agree. Do you want to turn your mic on if you?
Push down the top of the mic at the base.
All right, there we go.
There it is. That's a trick.
Yeah, just spit on it, yeah. So to that end, I mean, it would be very helpful to see the results of that, the work that GHD did for Kiewit. I mean, I know that was in draft form, but it would be extremely helpful to understand that work that's been done to date, if that could be available to the committee. Secondly, to the point of leveraging work that's been done to date, the modeling, the far field modeling that the port has done was in EFDC Plus as part of that work, and I think the model runs themselves were based on an assumption of inputs that may not be relevant today. However, the mesh that was created for the base system may be useful and could save months of work, or could be updated slightly with new bathymetry in the Inner Harbor and then save months of work. So just to make sure that it's on record that that is available, it's downloadable through our website. We can share those files. In scope development, I mean, I would suggest that maybe the conversations with potential modeling candidates contemplate both building mesh from scratch versus leveraging existing content and see what the timeframes come back to look like, and whether, you know, provided there's no compromise in the scope of the effort and final product, might save months.
No, thank you for that. We agree. We're going to try to utilize everything that's currently available to help this effort. Yeah, we agree.
And in terms of getting the results from that initial work that's been done?
So you won't be able to get, we have data from what GHD has done. We have spreadsheets and spreadsheets. It's like 100,000 sheets of data. But we can share the presentation with the results to the committee. It'll be a match to what was presented last year. But we never got to the point of actually producing a report from that effort. So we don't have that to deliver, but we can share what we do have with the committee.
Yeah, it just may be that there are individuals here with the expertise to use those raw outputs from that modeling effort to just get a sense of what that preliminary look showed. I mean, I'm not one of them, but I've got folks in the room who may be capable of doing that rather than having that distilled summary.
Yeah, thank you.
Brett, thank you. And I just wanted to comment just a little bit back on the timeline, but I want to talk about the charge of this committee to be very clear. But what Jeff and Sharon both brought up are excellent points in really just scratching the surface of, I think the timeline is certainly aspirational and aggressive, as you point out. And I just want to be realistic that you know, it's quite the undertaking. Now, I'm not saying, I mean, I would love to have a model in that amount of time, but, you know, just being realistic, is that going to happen just from the get-go is something we probably need to really think about. And keep that in mind. But Brett, I'm looking at the charge, and just to be clear, the way I'm understanding this is back on slide 8 about how it appears that the committee
this advisory group you're assembling, it's a very narrow charge. Carrie, for example, brought up some good points about broader water quality and that sort of thing, which I don't think anyone in here disagrees or doesn't want good, clean water and that sort of thing. But I'm understanding this as, we have a very specific charge to identify this model with the right parameters. So if that's not the case, I just make sure, we deliver the advice you're really looking for, because we could advise a lot on fish impacts and other things and a whole suite of other things revolving around desalination. But I will have a follow-up question to that, but that's the case?
That is how I see it as well. It's very narrow. So we're looking to understand how the Inner Harbor desalination plant could impact the Greater Bay system. So we're looking at the discharge from the plant into the ship channel and understanding how that water, that brine, will impact the greater system. So any other contributing factors, say from Corpus Christi polymers, from any of the large volume users of the chemical plants, they'll be considered as inputs into the system simply as, just as we would from our wastewater treatment plants, et cetera. So that should absolutely be considered when you do the modeling effort. But I wouldn't say the constituents coming out of those inputs are part of the discussion. It's the input that we're focusing on is the inputs specifically from the Inner Harbor plant. So when we say narrow scope, that is how I see it.
So then, do you want us to consider the broader impacts, or are we just identifying a modeling team?
Well, so by defining the scope and how we want, through this effort, you may say, I want to know what the salinity impact would be at 4 foot below the water at the, furthest point of the Corpus Christi Bay. This committee say, I want to know exactly what that looks like, so that would be part of the modeling effort. You may say, I want to know what it is at 6 inches above the bottom of the ship channel.
Yeah.
And whether or not it's hypoxic as a result of this. I mean, we need to talk about the X, Y, and Z of the entire system, and we need to agree on that too, because if you're looking at 6 inches above the bottom versus 6 inches above the top, it's going to be a dramatic difference in what you see, and we need to collectively as a team understand, is that really reflective of what is going to truly impact, say, the fish or the rest of the ecosystem. So there's a lot to discuss and for us to collectively understand, what we want to get out of this.
Okay. And just last final point, I'll make it quicker here. The nature of the plant does alter the system there by the nature of it, even though there could be potential contaminants or whatever. The desalination process is concentrating what's currently in the water, and then it's putting it back in a concentrated way, not just the salt. That includes other things that might come with the salt. So even though I understand what you're saying about there's other plants doing different things that aren't the subject here, this plant does affect that. So, that should be built into the model that, there will be this concentration process occurring that's put back in a concentrated way that will, it's probably not going to be, kind of one for one, what's there, what's came out. So anyway, that's just something the model is, we can talk about that a lot later, but that's something to build into the process.
Thank you.
I have a point of discussion. I'm trying to understand the proposed discharge and intake locations. So I double checked on a map. The Inner Harbor is basically a dead end. And so if you're discharging what would be upstream of the intake, then wouldn't it be kind of common sense that the brine would build up in the dead end of the Inner Harbor anyways? It'd be completely relying on the ship traffic and the tides, and those would definitely be incorporated in the model. But there's just absolutely no flow from upstream that would guarantee that brine would even be mixing to where it would go straight to the intake, essentially. Like she said, they're very close together, but I'm just worried that the discharge is on the other side of the outlet from the intake. So I feel like that would affect even the plant efficiency if you're just increasing the salinity that's being uptook by the desal plant.
So these are kind of two different things, right? So if what you're describing is how the brine's going to move within the overall system. The initial efforts that were done by Freeze and Nichols and even Kiewit show that there is a overall mass balance. If you look at the overall mass balance and how everything's kind of moving in that ship channel, it's actually moving out of the ship channel. So it's not moving back towards the end of that, what you were calling the dead end. So we already have analysis and results that show that it actually moves out towards Corpus Christi Bay. But one thing that this model, it could be something we find, you can take that into consideration and see how that's going to flow. The modeling done by GHD was focused on how the water's going to move out from the diffusers, which, that was part of their design effort. This modeling is really not, there's going to have to be a number of assumptions made on how that water's moving out, and they can use some of the information that Kiewit's already done in terms of their diffusion model to help influence that model and kind of show how the water's going to move. But I think that's something that would probably come out of this modeling effort.
I guess what I can't see that your comments made me think of is all of the discharge from the industry that might be pushing that water out. That would probably be the biggest flow impact to the Inner Harbor. I'll look more into that. I have another question about the timeline, how the cost certain option is expected to come next month. And so I was just wondering if this model that we're trying to get 2 months after that, if that will be taken into consideration by CCDP, and could that possibly affect the cost if we, find something that they're not even thinking about because they're not doing this type of model?
I don't think it would affect their costs. What it could influence is if this comes back and the model shows that this is detrimental, then there may be some design changes that could be made to avoid that impact. So then that could drive costs. But if it comes back and shows that there's no impact, then there would no cost implications. They would continue moving forward. But I would say that there's design solutions to work around whatever the results are of the project. Some may come with a cost, some may have no cost impact. So, and the city has the ability to modify the contract. So if we come back and we say that, just as an example, we say that there's going to be detriment, and the only way to get around it is to run a pipeline with the brine out to the Gulf, right? That has huge cost implications, and that would be something that the council and the city would have to consider. So I'd say right now, I don't anticipate it impacting it, but it could, depending on what the results are, and if the council wants to move forward, even knowing the results.
So it's only a cost certain option if the model deems there's no impact?
Either way, if they deem there's an impact or there's not an impact, council will have to make a decision when we actually come back with a contract for consideration. So this isn't binding, the February decision isn't binding the city to anything. It's simply giving the CCDP team and the city staff approval to move forward with developing a contract for consideration. So we're not binding the city in any way by moving forward with that.
I just want to reiterate talking about scope and inputs. I think one thing also, we had a couple questions that I think could be answered by some of the past work. So I'd suggest you guys grab the far field studies that the port did, the previous stuff that you all have done. I think Bart would be very interested in seeing the speciation study that was done as part of the permitting process. I would be super interested actually in what Carrie said. My understanding is that the plant design is designed to landfill all the heavy metals that pass through the plant, and that EPA was very interested in long-term nickel and copper concentrations, and that was one of their big points on how much, if any, those would go down. So I think if there's a way to include that and be able to show the council the positive effects of the plant on the environment, that would be great. I think the community needs to understand that we are removing toxic substances from the environment by operating this plant. in me looking at the past studies, one of the things that I was struck by was, I mean, one thing is that they generally use the permit limits as the starting point in the near field. My understanding is that the work that the Australians did that we didn't get a final report on would probably be a better starting point for what the salinity levels would be at the end of the near field, because that was actually modeling a plant design under real operating conditions. So I would say if we can get that data and use that as a starting point, I think that's a much better assumption point than what the permit limit is. I think we should talk as a committee about suggesting to the council that they pay to finish the report on that plan. I have no idea what that would cost or what kind of time frame that is, but I think that would be a useful, if we've already paid for all the science, I think the community as a whole, we should be able to pay for the cost of some of the people who did it to write it up, and that way everybody can really read and understand it. And I think, one of the things I've been struck by is I don't think the previous studies have taken into account the full amount of freshwater inflows that happen. And they certainly don't, for instance, none of them take into account the fact that we're shifting a significant amount of freshwater inflows from Oso Creek to the Inner Harbor based on what the council did 2 weeks ago. And I've heard that there's various stages of more discussion on that. So if we're moving where the wastewater discharge points are, that will affect any model. And so I hope that you guys would put that in. My understanding was you were working on some return flow modeling in terms of rainwater runoff to be able to confirm whether the assumed runoff levels in the agreed order are still accurate or not, or whether we could update those. I think that would be great information if, we have, because I think most of the ones before have used creek gauge for runoff, but there's significant runoff directly into the bay, and there's significant direct rainfall onto the bay that I don't, me reading the previous reports, I don't think that got included. And so I think making sure that we have accurate freshwater inflows. And then I guess the last thing on that is a significant amount of whatever we take out is actually going to go back in as freshwater inflow. And so I think the model should take that into account, that a significant portion of whatever fresh water this community consumes goes directly back into the bay system as wastewater. And so if our consumption goes up, the freshwater inflows also increase. So that's my input on that at this point. And I want to thank you guys for your work in doing this.
Yeah, it got presented when those results were shared, that it was intellectual property for us to see much more, and they wouldn't answer questions about boundary conditions, input assumptions. I would say that if we can't get to that information, having more of that isn't perhaps all that useful to us. So it would be very helpful to understand the full depth of that analysis and the model itself. What isn't proprietary is standard constitutive equations, diffusion coefficients, things like that this has been studied for a long time, and they should have revealed those. So when we look at a model or two, we want a complete open book so that we can see was, something tweaked or a mistake made. We need to have that open book with the modeling folks. A second point is that back to my former point, when you get done with this model, if we're looking at a time frame and, it's a week before, they're going to vote in April, there's usually a cycle of, we look at the results, the biology people will come back and say, this is a concern here. I'd like to do some more fine-meshed sub-modeling in this area to understand what's happening at this section of the bay. Is that going to build up hypoxic over time? And so from a timeline standpoint, that's why I think it kind of should have its own bullet at the end of this review time for these experts to look at this and come back and say we need more modeling time on this topic. And then one last point, realized that I didn't read anything in all the TCEQ documents about concerns about spill contamination. So this is a rather confined body. It is a dead leg. It has some inflow and outflows with tide, but what's the opportunity for either a ship, you know, that it's offloading or onloading? There's quite a few opportunities in there. What's the risk level of that? So from a modeling standpoint, you could get into that. I know it's beyond the scope of this here, but I just bring this up as something that could be modeled, and it is, you know, whether these products would be buoyant and taken off and they'd never get sucked into the intake. That's probably likely, but I just want to highlight it's a concern of mine that I think should have been looked at from a safety standpoint.
Yeah, so two things on your scheduled timeline. We're not going to put this committee or council in a situation where they don't have enough time to review and provide the necessary input. So we have a much more detailed timeline on how everything's going to play out. I didn't share that with you guys because it's very cumbersome, but we're absolutely going to give all parties the time they need to make the reviews, the comments, and to get finalized and be comfortable with the information that's being provided, so that we appreciate that input. On your third item, spills and all that was considered, absolutely considered. Okay. One of the benefits of the technology being used in desal plants is if you do have oil spills or some other contamination, if they are even able to get to the depth where the intake would have been, most of those pre-treatment processes actually remove those. And if it became so heavy that it was going to be a detriment to the plant would just shut down, and we wouldn't continue to operate. But the treatment process itself would just naturally remove those elements from the water. But in addition, you know, the intake, I think we were at like 30 feet or so below the water, and most of those things sit pretty high in the water table, so you wouldn't actually, the likelihood of bringing them into the plant's pretty low. But to your point, it was absolutely considered, and we had report on that? No, it was just part of the natural design process of discussion on what do we do in case this does happen. As we would have progressed through the project, those type of operational discussions would have happened, and that would have been part of the overall operations plan. If you did have events like that, we would be working with the owner of said contaminant, and then we would have plans in place to kind of shut down portions of the plant appropriately to prevent any type of contamination or disbursement of whatever that contaminant was. Right.
One last thing was
yeah, thank you, Brad.
Was that a concern about, you know, in looking at all the inflows and outflows, and so we have the movement, particularly if you're in between tides, there's no movement, but you are obviously always taking water from the Inner Harbor through the power plant and putting it into Nueces Bay. So while we might not be as concerned from a recreational and fisheries standpoint with Inner Harbor itself, this would be going into Nueces Bay, and so understanding what that impact is and where that discharge is in Nueces Bay, and you know, particularly during times when salinity might be already high and we're putting more. That's one of the interests I have in this model. Does it take a situation, I worked with Dr. Zimba here at TAMUS, former director of Center Coastal Studies, talked with him a bit about this, and that you can be close at a tipping point where it's not just a bulk average 1 PPT increase that we're concerned about. This could be a localized, and in the time domain, short or maybe collected over time. But that's definitely, I think, something I didn't hear so much about was that movement into Nueces Bay.
Right, so the modeling that was done previously leading it, some of the inputs and outputs may not have been considered in previous models. It was definitely considered when we were doing the GHD model with Kiewit. Okay. Inside the ship channel, and it should absolutely be considered as part of this effort. We need to consider all inputs and outputs to the entire system. So we need to work with whatever modeler comes on board to make sure that we have all that documented and considered. So we agree, yeah, it's important.
So to that end, we'll just want to make sure we have the latest status update on the CCP permitted desal facility on the Corpus Christi Polymers campus there in the Inner Harbor.
Right, yeah.
Status may be changing there.
That's right, yeah, we have that, and that was also considered with the GHT model. We have all the permit limits for not only the Corpus Christi Polymers, we have the La Quinta plant. We probably should consider the Inner Harbor plant. We just need to consider the worst case for all these plants. So we just got to talk about what we want to include, what we don't want to include, et cetera. Yeah, we agree.
I had a question about the operation. So is it assumed that CCDP is going to go off of the Kiewit, like just from what they had already established? It's been a while since I read any of those permits. Are they still available?
So the permit set.
Or not
so
the permits, but like just how the engineering of what they were planning?
They're using Kiewit's information to help them through this process. They're going to develop their own design. They're going to use the technology they feel is appropriate. So they're going to personalize their design in the plant, but they're going to use Kiewit's information to help inform them on what's been done to date, their thought processes, but they're going to validate everything that was done.
Okay, I would just really like to know if it's true that the heavy metals being pulled out of the Inner Harbor really would be sent to the landfill.
So we're veering off a little bit, but I'll just,
It's
as part
important
of.
because if they're
yeah.
not, then they're going back into the Inner Harbor.
So the pre-treatment process for the plant has, Kiewit had put in two items for pre-treatment. It was an ultrafiltration and a dissolved air flotation system. And through that process, you would be pulling out a number of constituents out of the water, and then those constituents would be put into, we'll just call it a dumpster, that would then dry out, and then all of that sludge would be transported to a landfill that could receive it. Now, the plan was going to be two steps. One, when we did the pilot plant, we were going to get a better understanding of how much of the constituents would be pulled out through the process, and then what the levels of each constituent would be. And then we would work with either our landfill, if they can receive it, or we would go to a landfill that's able to receive, if there was a level that was too high of, let's say, a heavy metal, and our landfill was unable to take it, then we would work with another landfill that's able to take it.
Which would be more expensive.
It could be, that's right. So the pilot process is extremely important. We didn't get there, but that was going to inform us on the volume that we were going to be pulling out and also the makeup of the constituents that we pulled out. So I know David was talking about that earlier. We do have some information on what the water quality is. We never got to the point where we understood how much of each of those items we were pulling out, but there is some information available. That's right.
Is there going to be a, Deanna King, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, I'm like, who's talking?
Is there going to be a storage building built to hold the brine before it's shipped out to the landfill?
No, the brine, as it goes through the reverse osmosis process, as soon as that brine is pulled out, it's being sent directly back out into the ship channel.
I mean the sludge, I'm sorry.
Oh, the sludge is separated early in the process, and it's pulled out separate. It's put into a disposal area, which would most likely be like dumpsters. It'd be allowed to dry out, and then it would be hauled off.
And that's going to be like on the daily?
We hadn't figured out the volume yet, but let's just say there would be daily movement, maybe 10 yards to 20 yards of sludge daily that would be hauled off.
There was a calculated number of trucks, trip traffic, yeah. But it wouldn't be, to your question, we wouldn't be storing indefinitely materials. It would be, once the dumpster's filled up, it would be taken to a landfill.
You would have daily movement of that. You might have one or two truckloads a day being pulled out of the plant.
We have examples of this at our wastewater treatment plants. There's no storage of any material taken to the landfill. It's dried out, put into dumpsters. Once the dumpster's full, it's covered and taken away.
That's right.
Yeah.
Then I guess my follow-up question is, if there's going to be dumpsters, where are the dumpsters going to be located?
They'll be on-site in the plant, so they'll be in the treatment area. So they'll have, one or two of those roll-off dumpsters set up. As it fills up, they'll haul it off, they'll bring a new one in.
It'll be, Deanna, it will be covered, it's not the right word, but it'll be enclosed. It's not going to be open aired. I think your question is this stuff going to get into the environment?
That's correct.
That's your question. So the answer is no, most likely. It would, the ones we've toured, they're either completely enclosed or partially enclosed. Like our wastewater treatment plants, they're partially enclosed. But that'll be all part of the design to eliminate any type of airborne spreading of the material.
And that's still in design. What I'm talking about was Kiewit's effort. The CCDP team has a different idea of how they're going to handle that. It's similar, but it's different. So we're still working through that.
Can you give examples of what will be taken out for the sludge and what is left in the water to be dispersed, like of the contaminants?
I don't have a list of all the contaminants right now, but generally you're gonna have metals being pulled out. You're gonna have soil, sand, whatever you want to call it, pulled out. There'll be other constituents. I don't want to pretend to know the full list. That's something that we can share with the group of the water quality, some of the things that we've seen. We'll send that out, Carrie.
Hi, I was wondering if the diffuser and intake design that we're going to model is like a generic design, or if it's going to be significantly different than CCDP's diffuser intake design.
So I think that's something we as a team need to discuss. We have a design, for the most part, already completed by Kiewit that can help inform us on how we could achieve the dispersion needed to meet the permit. So we could use that as our baseline. We could also take a different approach. If you're asking me, I'd say we already have a really good example of how the water can be dispersed. I think that would be a good starting point for the group. But the final design of the dispersion will be determined by CCDP. I imagine it will probably be similar to what Kiewit's already done.
Cool. And then I'm really curious about the near field. We will be using near field modeling results as input for the far field model, or are we going to use it at all?
I think we should consider using it. I mean, it's a good baseline. Kiewit's already gone through the effort. We have an idea of what the salinity impact would be across the entire water column at that point, up to that 400-foot mark. Even beyond, as you know, we did the entire inner ship channel, the limits all the way to the far west, past CCP, and all the way to the mouth of the ship channel by the aquarium.
And that's Kiewit's near field modeling, or is that the Friesen Nichols near field modeling?
That's GHD under Kiewit.
Okay.
And that's the near and far field, the far field extending out to the limits I just described.
Will we be able to look at the near field modeling that GHD produced?
Again, we don't have the report. We do have the output for certain points in the water column. I don't have because the complexity of that model, if you can imagine, the grid system went from the bottom of the ship channel about 56 feet all the way to the top of the water column, and then the full 700-foot width of the channel. So we have certain points of data available which are in line with what we were talking to the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, trying to identify the monitoring points that are required per the permit.
Right.
So we have data at a couple of very specific points that can help inform us.
And the reason I ask is because for near field modeling, usually core mix is used, which makes a lot of assumptions because it's steady state. Like, for example, it assumes the water doesn't come back, it just continuously flows in one direction. And this is a reversing tide situation. So when the tides are about to change, it's called slack tide. And there can be a lot of reattrainment where the diffuser is trying to dilute the effluent with surrounding ambient water, which when the tides are low around the slack tide, it may not be able to achieve that kind of dilution. So I was just wondering, if we can see that to make sure those kind of factors are being considered or were considered when it was looked at.
Right, so again, we don't have the report. We do have good information from GHD, the presentation that we previously presented, and we can probably gather some additional info. But GHD considered everything from top to bottom of the column, tide, wind, temperature, existing ambient historical information over almost 30 years of collected data for this region. So it was extremely comprehensive. It was not core mix for the near field. It was Mike 3 throughout. So it's way more comprehensive than anything that's been done to date for this area.
Cool. I guess my other concern is, let's see, I think you're familiar with like Dr. Hodges. If you're not, he studied hypoxia here brine discharges here in Corpus Christi. And he's contracted by the Water Development Board to do that in 2005. And he wrote a report in 2006 that said a lot of traditional models have a hard time modeling a thinning brine plume. And what happens is when the plume becomes thinner than the grid cell height in the model, basically it's artificially diffused and there's no longer a plume. It's just kind of, it's called numerical diffusion is what he calls it. And so I'm concerned maybe GHD's modeling might suffer from numerical diffusion, and I would like to verify that it doesn't before we use it for our efforts.
Right. Again, Jason, we've been through this. I don't know if I'm going to be able to give you all the information you need to get there, but I think as a group, we need to determine the level of detail we want, and we've been talking through it, right? So when we first, I'm just going to back up here a little bit. When we first started the project with Freeze and Nichols many years ago, they performed a mass balance equation, very, very high level review of the entire system, and made a determination on impact to the entire bay system. And then as times progressed, the port did a couple models that went into a little bit more detail using core mix, and then the USDC Plus, I think, is another one, and then we did the suntans model. So there's multiple models that have been used over time. And then when Kiewit came on board, they used GHD, who has experience working with the doctor. And they used a Mike 3 model, which is extremely comprehensive. It takes into account way more elements than any model previously. So there's a pretty wide range of models that can be used to garner information. So this committee needs to figure out which level we want to use, and then the inputs, outputs, items of consideration that we want to put into it. And there's no right answer, but we as a group need to figure out what makes the most sense to give us the information we need to make a decision. So Jason, as usual, I appreciate the input. I don't know if we're going to be able to give you everything you need to come to that conclusion. We'll share everything that we have available. And to David's point, maybe we look at actually securing GHC services to complete that report for the benefit of this group so that we can help influence that decision. So we'll take that back and think about that. Yeah.
I have a quick question. So the timeline is so tight that I'm wondering if there's a possibility that even though we decide, this is what we're looking for in terms of the model and the modelers and what the scope is going to be, that you don't get any takers simply because they're going to be like, we can't do this in a month. And is there like a plan B, or what's the alternative if you don't get people that are interested in actually doing this work? Because it's a very, very short time frame.
Yeah, I think the reality is once we get that feedback from the modelers, the city we need to discuss and we need to determine whether or not we want to push back the decision so that we can get this information. I mean, the goal is April, right? We're flexible. Water security is important. We're trying to bring on any new water source we can, but we also understand the importance of this committee's input and collaboration throughout the process. So we want to make sure that we're making the best decision. So if we get a good modeler who's capable of doing everything we want to achieve and the timeline is not in alignment with what we're at, we've just got to go back and figure out what makes the most sense. And then we'll come back to the committee and we'll talk about it. But we've just got to collaborate.
In the near field model, did it incorporate the hydraulic movement in the inner harbor from when ships come in and out? Also in the far field model, in the bay itself, I mean, I live on North Beach and these huge shipwrecks, come across and hit the beach, and you can see water just churning. And so these ships are displacing so much water. And I think that that's way more than any incoming or outgoing tide, any kind of rainfall that might come in, or it's the ships moving through the inner harbor and how that's going to bring the discharge, I guess, up into the water column and change what it's doing. So I just wondered if that's considered in this modeling at all?
So it was considered in GHD's model when they ran it, and it can absolutely be considered, it should be a consideration here as an input into the system. I think so.
On the timeline, I would feel very uncomfortable given where we are as a community and the fact that the state and the city have already agreed to build this plant, of us going back and presuming to tell the council to delay a project that if it's not completed will have very dire health and social and political and economic consequences for this region. You know, I think the studies that have been done are pretty clear that there is not, you know, that the plan is not going to destroy the environment, as some people have said. I think there could be a high level of value of doing it right over a series of months or years in order to give good information to the operators of the plant on how to design and operate and build that plant, that I think is a better goal than trying to delay this so then we delay start of the project. You know, I don't want us to be used as a cudgel. You know, I'd rather do it right, but I'd rather do it independently of a decision on hiring a team to move forward on construction. But I think it's important for you all to have a discussion with them, because it's somewhat of a chicken and egg problem. Is if the council is optimizing for a certain price, the plant size may go down, and that affects what the modeling is. You know, and so I guess I'm saying I'd rather have a model that is based on what is actually getting done and that can inform operation than trying to guess and use the model to go the other way, because we don't know what decisions the council has more than just this as inputs on their decision. And so if we model one thing, it could end up being that they decide to build something different. And so I'd rather have a firmer sense of what they're going to do and be able to model that and have that be able to come back and inform operations than anything else. I think that's the value to be provided by this process at this point. That's my input.
Yeah, thank you, David.
I would just like to point out real
actually,
quick.
yeah, Kirsten, I'm sorry, Kirsten wanted
Oh,
to
yeah.
chime in.
No,
You're good now? Okay. Okay.
If the model does find that whatever diffuser they're proposing will impact the bay, then maybe they should be building something different. That's kind of the whole point of doing it before we're in deep on what it is.
Yeah, that's why I said the GHG study said the diffuser doesn't have any impact on the bay. I mean, that was the study that got canceled before the final report could come out. So that's why I suggested they finish it so everybody can read it. But I mean, and I gather you said that you're gonna show us that presentation, or at least the slide deck from it?
That's right, that's
Okay.
correct. Yeah, and back to what you were saying, David and Jessica, is, again, and I mentioned this at the beginning, that there are certain council members that really want to see this before they make a decision. And it's not all council members. It may be, and I'm speaking a little bit for Peter here, it may be that we get to April and CCDP is ready to present, but we as a team are not. And it may be that council says, no, bring it in front of us. We want to review this and make a decision, even though we don't have this information yet. We're going to keep them informed so that they can make that decision, because there may be a majority of the council that says, no, we'd like to proceed and we want to review this and talk about it. So like I said before, we're going to just work our way through this process. And as we approach that date, that decision will be made by the city manager and city council on whether or not the item actually gets put on the agenda. But we are charged with doing this, so we're going to just move forward. We're going to go as aggressively as we can to make sure that we do it right. And we'll let the city manager and council make a decision on whether or not it's presented to council in advance of actually having this information.
Okay.
Can I just ask a clarifying question on that?
Just 1 second. We have 5 more minutes to keep respectful of your time. we might be able to extend, but just, so you know, let's make an effort to stick to the time so we can go with you. If there is another comment, we can include it as well with Brad. We can go to you next.
Okay. I just had a follow-up question for you, Brett, because to clarify, my understanding was that the Mike 3 GHD model did not extend beyond the boundary of the Inner Harbor and Corpus Christi Bay. So I just want to be clear that there's no Mike 3 model developed for Corpus Christi Bay at this point. It only covers the Inner Harbor, and that's where it stopped.
That's correct. It stopped.
That was what they called a far-field model, but in this case, I thought our charge was to go beyond that into Corpus Christi and Nueces Bay.
That's correct. This far-field model is going beyond the limits of the work performed by GHD.
And I'm not saying that Mike 3 couldn't be used for that, but I just want to be clear that that is
Yes.
what's available at this point.
That's
you know.
correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Brad,
I
you
just
have-
wanted to raise an interesting point that there was a study that was put out, I'm sorry, I can't remember who did it exactly, but they said that wind was the largest impact on salinity gradients in the bay system. So as we look at modeling those, just want to bring that concern, or that thing to the
Absolutely, that
fore.
should be an input into this. Whatever model we choose, that should be considered, in my opinion. I agree. Lamont, did you?
I'm just going to follow up on that GH studies went to 400 feet, and to the mouth, it did not extend to the Bay of Corpus Christi. So I just want to make that reiteration of that.
Okay, thank you, Lamont. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just
Mike.
wanted to follow on with Dr. Hurska's comment and then Mr. Loeb's comment about getting it right. I think there is a bit of a lesson to be learned here from what transpired in the fall, which is that, we know that the Texas Conservation Foundation released an external review of the Plummer Inner Harbor model, which was done by Dr. Arnoldo Valley-Levinson from the University of Florida, and very detailed review. And it pointed out some very significant deficiencies in terms of the modeling that was done. And I think one of the really important points here that gets to the timing of this issue, though, is that it pointed out that a lot of that model was predicated on either assumptions about data or just missing data in general. So I think back to my original point that I made, to really get this model right, which I think is important for folks that live on the water and that rely on healthy water in this area, you're probably looking at a much longer timeline for getting the data to actually give you an accurate model. And I think that was what Dr. Hurska was talking about. So just something to consider is, we probably should go back and look at the Valley-Levinson review of that modeling as well before we consider incorporating that modeling or using it to feed in any kind of far-field modeling, because there are some serious deficiencies there.
Appreciate it. I think whatever information that the modeler chooses to use as input into whatever their work product is I think we, as a team, can review it. We're not encouraging any model to be adopted and modified. Me personally, I prefer that they take the available information, because all the information, as an example, GHD uses available to the public, right? So they can go collect that historical data and use that as an input into theirs. They could also go out and do their own sampling, observations, et cetera. We have data available through the project that could be utilized if they want historical data, or they could go set up their own sondes and do their own observations. So I wouldn't encourage us adopting anybody's model. I think we need to start from scratch, I say scratch, and use the information available to kind of build into it. But your point's taken. Thank you.
I think there's another, just to some of these recent comments, we're talking about understanding the impact of this desalination facility, i.e., we want to understand deltas. We want to understand changes. The Corpus Christi Bay salinity is what it is based on all the things that are impacting it today. And the question isn't, is that too high or too low or too bad? The question is, does this facility make a meaningful change? That's the question that's answered, not is the level of what's out there healthy today, it's does this make a difference? So that's what we're looking at, not, we can do ranges. You could say, what if Corpus Christi Bay was X? What if it was Y? You could model it both ways, and if it doesn't make very much difference whether, it's X or Y, you've got your answer. You don't need all the data in the world. You just need to know what the delta is. And so you can do a lot of meaningful work making assumptions and then seeing what the impact is.
Thank you, Roger.
Do we have any additional question?
I have a brief one.
Okay.
If this doesn't exist, it sounds like it would be very useful to have an inventory of all the available data that the modelers could use, or start compiling it, because that in itself is going to take some time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would
Thank
love
you.
to see that inventory, just so we make sure that they have everything that we know is available, because of course, they could have things that we don't know, but as a community, we need to be able to access that.
And just to comment on that, point taken, absolutely. I think once we, as a team, understand what we want to include, then we start compiling and sharing. I don't want to start sending stuff that maybe doesn't make sense to send, but absolutely, thank you.
Maybe not to us right now, but, things that, the temperature, the salinity, the wind
Right.
field, the currents, I mean, just things that we know have to go into the model. Just
Right.
getting all that data
Yeah,
in formats to be able to be assimilated into a model takes time. So
That's
having
good.
an inventory and compiling it would help with the timeline.
thank you.
And it needs to be a lot more than just salinity. From what Roger was saying, it's not just measuring the salinity now versus the salinity after the plant is built. It's a lot more than salinity, I hope.
That's correct. Thank you, Carrie.
Okay. If we all agree, we can move on to adjourn this first introductory committee meeting. We do have some next steps that we want to share with all of you. So,
Yeah, just briefly, we will send out a new meeting invite to the group. So you'll be seeing another email come through, another date. We're going to stick to this timeframe, 11 to 1. Again, lunch provided. We understand everybody cannot attend. If you can't attend, we appreciate you just notifying us so that we know in advance. And maybe if there's any questions or concerns that maybe we can answer in advance of it, we can get back with you. Again, it'll be 6th floor, City Hall. This is the spot. We really appreciate you guys coming out and participating in this. There's going to be a lot more traffic, emails, meetings, et cetera. There's still a lot of work ahead. But we appreciate the involvement today. I think this was positive, good discussion, and we hope that you feel the same way. And as Jose mentioned earlier, if you guys have recommendations or suggestions that would help this be more productive, if you feel like there's more information that we should be providing so that we can keep it productive, let us know so we can do better. Thank you.
Can I ask one clarifying question?
Yeah,
Will there ever, if we cannot be here, but we could participate virtually, would there ever be an option to do that? Because it specifically stated no proxies. So if I can't send a staff member, but I could join virtually from out of town or something, is that going to be an option?
Let us work on that.
Okay. I mean, I realize in person is best, but,
Right.
and would only utilize that if necessary, but.
Let us get with the IT. That's way above my head
Okay,
on whether or
just
not we
something
can
to think about.
integrate, but we'll absolutely look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, everyone.